you guys. Action.
Hi, I'm Sinead and I wrote the script for The Passenger, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience and hopefully that might be useful to some of you out there who are wanting to do something similar. There's a huge amount of resources that you can look at, and script bibles and so many different things that are there to kind of help people that are trying to write scripts. A quick Google search is going to give you the titles that you need, the Robert McKees, Save the Cats, Sid Field. So I'm not just going to list out all those books, I'm just going to talk about what I did to actually write a no-budget feature film. Initially, after I'd had the idea for The Passenger, which I talked about in a previous episode, I had to sit down and write a synopsis. This was basically a short 1.5 page document outlining the key points of the story. It was just written as normal prose, kind of like a short story, but more compact even. So literally just sat down with the laptop and wrote down the idea as it kind of formed in my mind, knowing that this would probably change along the way. Once I had the synopsis in place, I then looked at some character bios, and there's only three characters in The Passenger. So I wrote character bios for each of those and thought about those characters outside of the story world rather than just within it. So, you know, to make sure that they were kind of fully formed and I knew their backstory and what was going to happen to them in the future. Once I had the short synopsis and the character bios, I did go and share them with Brian. As the director, I kind of wanted to see where he thought the story was going and if he had any great ideas for some input. So if you've got somebody that you feel you can go to at that early stage, I found that really, really helpful to be able to bounce ideas off people and maybe to make a suggestion that might take you in a direction you hadn't really thought of. Once I had the synopsis and the character bios, I also just took small pieces of card and wrote scene cards. And this was really not particularly detailed. It was literally just the title of the scene, something that would identify it to me, and a few keywords or a one-line description of the scene. And I was able to then pin those on a board in front of me so I could see the way that the story progressed throughout the film and the arcs and the different plot points as I went along. Like I said, it was pretty basic at that point. So once I'd done that, then it was a case of sitting down and writing a treatment. I wanted to flesh out the synopsis further and really look at those scenes and see how they all work together. So the treatment ended up being probably about 4.5 to 5 pages, which was elaborating really on the synopsis and probably changed slightly in between the synopsis stage and the treatment stage. It, again, wasn't perfect, and I think that's kind of an important point to note to yourself. Like, if you're waiting for perfectionism, it's probably not a good idea. You're never gonna kind of reach that point at that early stage, so I would say just keep going and don't beat yourself up if it's not exactly as you want it to be. So with the treatment in place and lots of different notes and lots of different little research bits that I'd done, I would say always keep a notebook to hand as well. You never know when you're going to have an idea, or use the voice record on your phone. Actually, that's quite a handy function if you don't mind people sort of looking at you in the street and thinking, why is she talking into her phone? Once I had all that in place, I kind of took the treatment and sat down with Final Draft and began working on the script. I used Final Draft. It is expensive. I think it's worth the investment, but obviously there's lots of free software out there you can use. Just do a Google search for screenwriting software, or if you really don't want to do that, like, you could do it in a Word document and try and format it in some way, but I think it's a good idea to use some sort of script formatting software. So there is no secret, there's no recipe in my opinion for writing the script. It really is a case of sitting down and consistently coming back to it, starting at the beginning, and knowing where your ending is, I think is also really, really important. I knew where my end goal was. I knew where I needed to get my characters to when I was writing it. So I think that personally really helped for me. And then, yeah, it was just a day after day, maybe not consecutive days, of just sitting down and coming back to the script, even on those days when I didn't necessarily want to, at least to sit down for it with half an hour. And you often find that half an hour sort of spins out into longer. You don't always feel motivated, and weirdly there's that thing where you have to kind of do something in order to feel motivated, which is a weird kind of place to be, but I do think it's true. So I can't remember how long it took me to write the first draft, but I plugged away at it, having days where I wanted to chuck the laptop out the window, to go back and rewrite the whole thing. Don't. I think it can become messy if you start rereading the previous day's work and start tinkering with it, because you'll never actually reach your end goal, which is to finish the script. So I would say, in my experience, it's best to just kind of keep going. You will be writing another draft, so just keep going with this draft, see where it takes you. Once I'd done that and got to the end of my first draft, I then showed it to Brian and got his feedback on it first of all, and then sent it out to other people that were kind enough to read it and give me some feedback on it. It is really hard to get feedback, but there's no two ways about it. You need to do it if you want to write the best story that you possibly can. Everybody's feedback is incredibly valid. That doesn't mean you need to kind of use all of it. I didn't use all of the feedback that I got, but I'm incredibly grateful for the time that people took to read the script and the feedback that they gave me. And I think the most important point for me was, if multiple people are coming back to you with the same feedback about a particular part of the story or a character or a scene, then 10 times out of 10 you probably need to relook at that. That's not to say that individual feedback isn't important. It is, and it was for me. But yeah, be prepared to listen and chat with people. Most of the really great feedback I got was being able to have a conversation with somebody and getting them to elaborate on what they thought. And it's, if people want to give you feedback, it's great. It means there's something in the story that they found interesting. So daunting as it may be, go and get feedback. Once you've got your feedback, then come back to your script and start redrafting. I left it a little bit. I gave myself a little bit of time away from it. Then I reread the script, went through all the feedback and started again. So that was draft 2, then draft 3, and then draft 4. Getting feedback at every stage I think was pretty crucial. Once the script was in a place that I was quite pleased with, and that Brian felt was in a good place to kind of move forward onto the next part of the plan, that was what we did. So I also think it's important for me to say that in my experience the script could still change right up until the day of shooting. I certainly was prepared for that to happen, and when we were in rehearsals and we were going through things with actors, we made tweaks there as well. So when you're writing, it just is a case of positivity, consistency, and knowing it's not over till it's over.